Hey, careful TV, this is probably going to be the hardest thing I've ever had to talk about. I've shared this with only a few close friends before now, but I need to get it off my chest. It's something that happened to me a little over a year ago, and while life has moved forward, the weight of it hasn't left me. So here's what happened. I moved into a newly built house in the outskirts of Bismarck, North Dakota, just before winter set in. The development was fresh, bright white paint, modern black trim, identical front lawns with thin new grass still trying to settle in. Everything smelled like new wood and opportunity. I felt like I was finally entering a chapter of my life I could be proud of. My name is Andrew. At 35, I'd finally saved enough for my own home. Single, working remotely in IT, and not much of a social butterfly, I figured this would be a peaceful place to finally feel rooted. It wasn't big, just a 2-bedroom place on a quiet cul-de-sac. With a half-finished basement I planned to turn into a personal office or hobby room once I got the money and time. For a while, everything was exactly how I'd hoped. Quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, the occasional conversation with contractors still finishing up other houses nearby. About a month after I moved in, a woman named Tara and her little boy moved in next door. We didn't talk much at first. She seemed tired but friendly. Her son, Milo, was maybe 4, tops. Quiet, curious, always clinging to her leg or watching from behind the screen door. It wasn't long before he started wandering over during the day, especially when I was outside trimming the shrubs or taking the trash out. He didn't say much, just stood near the edge of my driveway and watched me, holding some small toy in his hand. I'd smile and wave. He'd wave back. At first, I found it kind of endearing. I figured he was just bored, maybe adjusting to the move like I was. Then came the noises. The first few times I heard them, I brushed it off. A thump here, a soft scuffing sound there. I thought maybe the heating system was adjusting. The kind of things you don't really question when everything in the house is brand new. But it kept happening. Subtle, easy-to-miss noises coming from the basement when I was upstairs. Sometimes I'd wake up at night and hear what sounded like a soft shuffling, or like something light falling over. I'd go down to check, of course, but everything always seemed in place. The basement was mostly unfinished, drywall half up, exposed beams and studs on one wall, bare concrete on the floor. I'd left a few extra chairs and kids' toys down there after my niece and nephew visited one weekend. One of the toys, a wooden rocking horse I'd bought online, was especially large. It didn't fit under the stairs, so I left it near the laundry sink for the time being. On more than one occasion, I'd find it turned slightly in a different direction than I remembered. I assumed I was misremembering, or maybe I'd brushed past it and knocked it around without realizing. But the feeling that something was off started creeping in. It wasn't just the sounds. It was the air. The kind of cold you feel when you open a freezer and stick your head in, except this cold wasn't from any draft. It lingered. It seemed concentrated around the laundry room. No matter how many times I adjusted the thermostat or sealed windows, the chill returned. And it wasn't just physical. There was something else, an unease that made me avoid going down there at night. I couldn't explain it. It was just a feeling. I tried not to dwell on it. Then, about 6 weeks after I moved in, I came home from the store and found 2 police cruisers parked near the curb outside my house. At first, I thought it was for someone else on the street, but when I parked and got out, one of the officers approached me directly. "You live here?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Is something wrong?" They said they had a warrant to search my basement. Apparently, someone had submitted an anonymous tip. They wouldn't tell me much more, just that the information had been taken seriously enough to involve a forensic team. I stood outside while they worked. The neighbor Tara came out holding Milo in her arms, looking as confused as I felt. I remember her asking one of the officers what was going on, but they didn't give her much either. It took them less than half an hour to find it. Behind a section of drywall near the laundry sink, a part I hadn't even touched, they found a tightly wrapped bundle, plastic sheeting, duct tape, a chemical smell that I still can't forget. Inside was a body, a child. I don't remember much of what happened for the rest of the day. I sat on the curb, shaking. Officers were in and out of the house. Eventually, a crime scene van showed up. News vans followed. By evening, the whole street had been taped off. Tara had taken Milo back inside, though she looked out the window now and then, pale and tense. The next few days blurred together. Detectives interviewed me multiple times. I cooperated, of course. I had nothing to hide. I hadn't touched that part of the wall. They brought in contractors, former construction workers, anyone involved in the building phase. Turns out the job had been subcontracted to a handful of guys for the finishing work in the basement. One of them, a man only listed on the invoice as Roger, had been paid in cash. No last name, no address, just a burner phone that was no longer active. They identified the child eventually. She'd been missing from a different state, Wisconsin, for almost a year. Her parents had filed reports, but no leads had gone anywhere. Somehow, this man, this Roger, had abducted her, kept her hidden for months, then sealed her inside the wall of a house being built hundreds of miles away. And no one had known. Not until now. I think the part that hit me the hardest was what Tara told me a few days later, once the street was quiet again and the reporters had left. We were standing at the edge of our driveways. I was still too shaken to go back into the basement. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her voice was quiet, almost apologetic, and said something that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Milo used to say one word, just girl, she said. Sometimes he'd be at the window, staring at your house, and he'd just say it. Girl. Over and over. At first, I figured it was an imaginary friend or maybe something he saw on TV. You know how kids are. She paused and looked away for a moment, squinting toward my living room window. But then, I started noticing things, she continued. Every now and then, I'd look where he was pointing, and I'd see someone inside your house, a little girl, just there, sitting with you on the couch. Once, I saw her next to you at the dining table. She blinked hard, trying to process it even as she said it aloud. I honestly thought she was your niece, or maybe a friend's kid you were babysitting. There was nothing weird about it. She wasn't doing anything strange, just being there, eating with you, watching TV. She swallowed, but after what the police found in your wall, and knowing now that you never had a child in your house alone with you, her voice trailed off. The air between us turned unbearably still. Neither of us said anything for a long while after that. We just stood there, two people trying to make sense of something that never should have happened. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing to say. I think that's when it truly sank in. How close we'd all been to something so horrible without even knowing. A body sealed in the walls, a child missing. And maybe, just maybe, some part of her is still trying to be seen. I've moved out since then. The house is still standing. I drive by sometimes, not on purpose, but there are days I find myself on that side of town and I take the long way home just to see. The windows are dark now, no one's moved in, and sometimes when I drive past slowly, I think about Milo pointing through my window. I think about what he thought he saw, and I wonder if, in his innocent way, he had been the only one really seeing her. The trunk. I've always thought family heirlooms were strange. The way generations pass down old belongings as if everything that ever held value must be eternal. Sometimes I think it's better to let things go, retire them, let them rest. If my father had shared that same belief, none of what I'm about to tell you would have happened. My name is Danny. I was 8 years old when this story began. My family had just moved into what would become our forever home. It was this old, charming two-story house with an attic that creaked if you even looked at it wrong. My older brother Noah and I were thrilled. We spent the first few hours running up and down the stairs until Mom gave in and let us go outside to explore the neighborhood. But stay close, she warned. We still need help unpacking, and for heaven's sake, do not go into the attic. We just moved a bunch of your granddad's things up there. It's a mess. We promised to behave and took off down the block. Within minutes, we ran into a group of neighborhood kids at the park. There were about 5 or 6 of them. One of them, a quiet kid named Rachel, wore a striped shirt that looked 2 sizes too big and had holes in the sleeves. The rest were Josh, Theo, and Caleb. Those were the ones I really clicked with. They were loud, funny, and up for anything. I remember laughing at how annoyed Noah looked that there weren't any other girls around. Later, we brought the group back to our house. We played tag, climbed trees, and eventually settled on hide and seek. Noah, Josh, Theo, and I rounded everyone up to play, and just as we were spinning a bottle to choose who'd count, I heard Mom shouting from the kitchen window, "Stay out of the house!" Of course, we didn't listen. The bottle landed on me. I began the fastest count to 60 I could manage, just enough time for everyone to scramble and hide. I heard giggles, scurrying feet, a door creak. I was buzzing with excitement. I was the new kid and already I had a crew. I could barely keep track of everyone's names, but I didn't care. When I reached 60, I took off. First, I found Noah behind the shed, then Theo hiding near the trees. But before I could find the rest, more kids appeared, kids I didn't know. At the center was a boy named Dylan, the kind of kid who you could just tell ran his own pack. "Who's the new girl?" he asked, smirking. "My name's Danny," I answered, suddenly unsure. "I was talking about her," he said, pointing at Rachel. Before I could say anything, Caleb came storming out from his hiding spot and got into Dylan's face. Words flew, then fists. The fight broke out so fast, it wasn't until my dad came running over and broke it up that it stopped. Dylan and his group stormed off, and the rest of us called an end to the game. A few kids left, and in the mix of it all, I lost track of who stayed. It wasn't until dusk that Dad called us inside for the night. I said goodbye to the others and headed in to unpack my room. Mine was the only bedroom on the main floor, just beside the stairs leading to the attic. I was especially excited because Dad promised that once we got settled, he'd help me turn a corner of the attic into a mini music nook, complete with my very first keyboard. That night, though, the house felt off. As I lay in bed, I swore I could hear humming. Low, vibrating, mechanical, and faint thuds from above me, from the attic. I told my parents the next morning, but Dad just smiled and said, "Old houses make weird noises, Han. It's probably just settling." I wasn't convinced. Later that day, a police officer knocked on our door. I couldn't hear what he said to Dad, but I saw the look on my dad's face. When I asked what it was about, he only shook his head and said, "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart." And just like that, he switched subjects. "Want to go pick out that keyboard?" We didn't get one that day. Sold out, apparently. But a few days later, my keyboard arrived, and strangely, the noises stopped. That silence felt like a gift. Eventually, I became pretty good at playing. Turns out Josh played the guitar and Theo sang. We formed a little trio and jammed together every weekend. It was everything I ever wanted. Around that time, Josh told me a kid in the neighborhood had gone missing. The police arrested his parents, and everyone assumed the worst. It hit us all a little harder than I expected. I asked if I'd ever met the kid. Josh thought for a moment. "Yeah, you did. Remember the quiet girl in the oversized shirt? Rachel? That was her first and last time playing with us." Years passed. We kept our little band going through middle and high school. Music carried us through some hard stuff. Our friend Theo died in a car accident during our sophomore year, and things never quite felt the same after that. I left for college on a scholarship. My dad passed while I was in high school, and just last week my mom followed. She left me the house, her old records, and everything stored in the attic. That's when the movers started arriving. I stood in my living room, now decades older, watching boxes and dusty furniture pile in. Then I saw it, my old keyboard. It brought a sad little smile to my face. Next to it was a trunk. Black, locked shut. I remembered it. That was Grandpa's, the one we weren't supposed to touch, the one that always sat in the darkest corner of the attic. Just then my phone rang. "Josh, Danny," he said cheerfully. "Hey," I responded. We caught up like we always did as I guided the movers. I told him about the trunk and joked about how it still wouldn't open. We moved from topic to topic until I brought up that missing kid again. "You remember what happened to Rachel?" I asked. Josh went quiet. "Rachel, yeah, she was the one who came over that first day, right? Quiet kid, striped shirt. I think that was the only time I saw her." "Wait, Rachel? Not Rebecca?" I asked. "Nope, definitely Rachel. She lived down near Glenway. Her parents got arrested. There was never a body, though." As he spoke, I grabbed a crowbar from the garage and started prying the old trunk open. "She was playing hide and seek with us that night, wasn't she?" I asked. "Yeah," Josh muttered. "Now that I think about it, I never saw her come out when we ended the game. That's the last time I saw her." A loud crack. The trunk popped open, and I screamed. The phone slipped from my hand. Josh's voice buzzed faintly from the floor, calling my name. Inside the trunk was a tiny skeleton, curled unnaturally, wearing a tattered, oversized, striped-collared shirt. My mother's voice echoed in my head like a ghost. "Please stay out of the attic. We just moved a bunch of your granddad's things up there. It's a mess." Those strange noises during our first few nights in the house, they weren't the house settling. They were Rachel. Sealed door. I moved into the house a few months ago. You know the kind. Modern renovations, glossy interiors, and just enough distance from the city noise to feel like you're living in a postcard. 3 bedrooms, an open-concept kitchen, clean white walls, and a tidy little backyard. $950 a month. Too good to pass up. I remember thinking it was a steal. My name's Ava. I had just landed a remote job, and this place felt like the beginning of a calmer chapter. Finally, space to breathe and the quiet to focus. But right from the first night, something felt off. Like I hadn't walked into a home, but a place that had been waiting. It started with a door, a narrow one tucked at the very end of the downstairs hallway. It wasn't labeled and didn't match the others. It had no knob, just a keyhole. I assumed it was a storage closet, one sealed off during the renovation. I remember trying it on move-in day, twisting the handle out of curiosity. It didn't budge. No click, no give, just a solid refusal. Weird, but not concerning. At least, not yet. During my first week, I settled into a routine. Grocery runs, Zoom calls, streaming at night. The quiet I had hoped for was all around me. The air felt still, like the house itself held its breath. That was fun. I liked silence. I liked feeling alone. Then the small things began. The first time it happened, I thought nothing of it. I came downstairs to find the hallway light on. I was sure I'd turned it off the night before. Maybe I bumped the switch, I told myself. No big deal. But then it was the fridge. I'd close it, only to find it slightly ajar in the morning. Once or twice, okay, but 3 times? 4? It began to gnaw at me. I started noticing footprints. They were faint, just the kind of oily outlines bare feet might leave on polished wood. They trailed along the hallway. They stopped right outside that sealed door. I stared at them for a long time one night, standing barefoot myself, wondering if maybe I'd made them. Maybe I was pacing in my sleep? Maybe. But I sleep on the 2nd floor, and those prints started at the hallway, not from the stairs. I tried brushing it off. Work stress, maybe. Sleep deprivation. That's what I kept telling myself. Until one night I heard breathing. It was around 2 a.m. I'd gotten up to grab a glass of water. As I passed the hallway, I froze. That door, the one that never opened, creaked. Not loud, just a subtle groan, like the wood had shifted. And then, behind it, I heard it. Slow, steady breathing. I stood there, 1 foot still in the kitchen, every part of me screaming to move. But I didn't. I stared at the door like it might open any second, like something might step out. I slept with a kitchen knife beside my bed that night. Not under the pillow like in movies, just close enough to grab. The next morning, I called the landlord. He sounded almost annoyed. Said the door had been sealed off during the last remodel and wasn't meant to be used. "It's just an old utility crawl space," he claimed. "We don't use it." He said he'd send someone to check it if I wanted. I said, yes. No one ever came. That following week, I noticed more strange things. My laptop was moved. Just a few inches, enough to make me second-guess myself. My pillow ended up on the couch one morning. My shoes, which I always lined up neatly near the entryway, had shifted positions. Then came the night I came home from the store. It was late, around 10:30. The street was still. I pulled into the driveway, groceries in hand, and unlocked the front door. The hallway was dim, but what caught my eye immediately was the sealed door. It was open, just slightly. Not enough to call attention, but enough to send a pulse of dread through me. I stood there, heart pounding, frozen with 2 bags of groceries at my side. I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe I didn't close it all the way that one time I tested it, but it had never opened before, not once. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. My hands were shaking. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last. When I pushed the door open, I expected to find a dusty closet, maybe some insulation, old boxes. What I found was a room. Low ceiling, soundproofed walls covered in black acoustic foam. In one corner, a sleeping bag. Next to it, a backpack, a few wrappers, protein bars, instant noodles, my butcher knife, my pillow. That broke me. My knees went weak. I backed out, shut the door behind me, and called the police. They searched the place top to bottom, no signs of forced entry. The sealed room was undocumented, wasn't even on the blueprints. They found signs of someone living there. Empty bottles, hair, prints, but no one was caught. They said it was probably a transient, someone who snuck in while the house sat empty and decided to stay hidden. I asked how they got in. No answer. They advised me to get better locks. I ended the lease that week, lost my deposit, paid $600 to move, worth every dollar. But what came after was worse. I posted my experience on a local renters forum, not even sure why. Maybe I needed to process it. A day later, I got a private message. Her name was Emily. She said she'd lived in the same house years ago, 2018, maybe earlier. She mentioned the door before I could bring it up, said it had always been sealed, but she'd heard whispering from behind it, like someone murmuring into the walls. She said she found cameras, tiny ones, hidden in vents, in light fixtures, even inside the wall sockets. She ripped them out in a panic, but didn't report it. She thought she was just being paranoid. She sent me a link. I didn't click it for 2 days. When I finally did, it wasn't diagrams, it wasn't photos of wiring, it was a video. Emily, sleeping, brushing her teeth, cooking, shot after shot, angles from high corners, from behind the air vents, a light fixture, even a corner of the bathroom mirror. One moment caught me. She looked right at the camera, eyes blank, unaware it was there. The video ended with a close-up of the sealed door, its handle slowly turning. There weren't any videos of me. Not on that link. But that made it worse, because it meant someone else might be watching them now, selling them, uploading them, somewhere I haven't found yet. I live in a cramped apartment now. It's loud, thin walls, constant traffic, but I sleep better. I unplug everything before bed. I cover vents, I check my smoke detector for lenses, but still I wake up sometimes, convinced I hear breathing. I check the closets, check the hallway. Every time, I half expect to find that door again. I never do. And yet every so often I'll stare at my own walls and wonder, what's behind them? I still think of that sealed door, that hidden room, the cameras, the feeling of being watched, and the video I haven't seen, because if there's one of Emily, there's probably one of me. I just haven't found it yet. So if you move into a place that feels perfect, too clean, too quiet, too affordable, check everything, every panel, every vent, every sealed door, because it's not always ghosts that haunt homes. Sometimes it's the people who never leave, the ones who hide inside your walls and watch you every single night.